Thank you for joining us today for the CREST Threat Intelligence Professionals webinar. They'll be giving you a bit of an update about what CTIPs has been up to and also to answer any of your questions at the end of this webinar. I'd like to thank Tim Haynes, Rob Dartnell and Oliver Fairbank, all from the CTIPs committee, who have joined us today to go through the presentation and to answer any of your questions. Okay then, so thank you very much, and I'm going to hand over to Tim.
Hello. Hopefully you can all hear me, and I've successfully unmuted myself. We've got about 45 minutes for this presentation. Well, a combination of the presentation and questions. So what are we going to look at in the next 45 minutes or so? Introduce the other people, introduce myself and other people on the call. Have a look at what is CTIPs? What's the purpose of the thing? Who's on the committee? What activities is CTIPs undertaking? And then slight change of direction. Clearly, one of the things that CTIPs is quite heavily engaged in is the CREST qualifications process for threat intelligence. So some top tips. I know that that's why at least a few of you are on the call to find out more about the exams. So some top tips on them, and then looking at the forthcoming changes to the committee and how the committee is going to evolve over time, and how you can get involved in CTIPs in the future. So that's the outline. In terms of the introductions, I'll go first things I'm speaking. I'm Tim Haynes. I work for a startup. Cyber intelligence startup called Orpheus Cyber, and I work there as a consultant advising clients in setting up threat intelligence processes. So if I can hand over to Rob for a similar introduction.
Cheers, Tim. Hi, everyone. So I'm Rob Dartnell. I'm the CEO of a company called Security Alliance. For those that don't know us, we are inherently known just for the CBEST and the type of work and the intelligence frameworks that we set up for intelligence sharing initiatives. I sit on the CTIPs committee. I'm also a CREST assessor and help write the CREST exams, and I'm also a co-opted member of the CREST executive board, so the overarching body as well. Over to you, Ollie.
Cheers, Rob. Cheers, Tim. So I'm Oliver Fairbank. I'm the head of analysis at Orpheus. So I work with Tim, obviously, on the CTIPs steering committee, and I'm also an assessor, of the CREST CTI exams. So the practitioner analyst, the registered analyst, and the CTIP Threat Intelligence Manager exam.
And Ali, over to you for an introduction.
I'm Ali Andrews, and I think you've probably all had emails of me, all the people who've come on this call, and I look after the PR and marketing for CREST. Hello, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you all. So introduction's done. Let's have a look at what CTIPs is. Clearly, it's CTIP stands for something, and that something is the CREST Threat Intelligence Professionals Group, and it's a subcommittee of CREST, clearly focusing on the threat intelligence profession. So I believe it's CREST's intention to set up similar groups for the other disciplines, so penetration testing and incident response and the various different verticals which exist within CREST. And I'm pleased to say that the threat intelligence has kind of led the way in terms of formation of a group. And as a subcommittee of CREST, membership of CTIPs is open to all individuals who are members of a CREST member company, and additionally to anyone who holds a CTI qualification. So that's your CCTIM, CRTIA, or CPTIA qualifications. In terms of the purpose or the function of CTIPs, there are three main objectives for the group. The first is communication, so helping both providers and suppliers in the cyber threat intelligence marketplace to understand what is available and how best value can be derived from it. And that's, I mentioned providers and suppliers, but of course there's also the regulators and various other sort of third parties that have very legitimate interests in the success and the successful deployment of cyber threat intelligence. So one of the main objectives of the group is to facilitate communication between all of those stakeholders. The second is capacity. So we are painfully aware of the shortage of providers of high quality threat intelligence services, the shortage of qualified personnel, and so one of the group's main objectives is to encourage appropriate individuals and organisations to engage with cyber threat intelligence and to build that capacity over time. And then thirdly, quality. Much as we're interested in increasing the capacity of provision and indeed the capacity of organisations to take and meaningfully use threat intelligence, we want to ensure that the quality provided by organisations and individuals in the market is maintained at a high standard. And clearly, this is where CREST really comes into its own. It has this reputation for providing high quality examinations to ensure the quality of individuals, and also the process of accreditation is thorough and robust, and therefore we're able to use that CREST membership as a badge of quality. When you wrap all of that up together, then it quickly becomes apparent that we are becoming a professional body for practitioners of cyber threat intelligence, and our core objective is to support and build and develop the industry in which we work. Nathan, no one's going to sort of try and pretend that we're not a new organisation. We've only been sort of in existence for slightly over a year. So as will become clear as we talk further through the slides, we are not 100% established. We've made some really good early progress and are continuing to develop very fast, but we are a new and nascent body. So hopefully now, with that understanding of CTIPs, who's on the committee, we're chaired by Oliver Church, who's a member of the main CREST committee, and as Rob previously mentioned, he is the vice chair, and he's also on that committee. Then we have two co-opted industry representatives. So one of the rules in the terms of reference that the committee is based on is that to be a full member, you need to be a member of a CREST member company. You need to be an employee of a CREST member company. And as you can see there, neither Direct Line Group or Facebook are member companies. Therefore, the committee took the decision to co-opt these individuals as industry representatives onto the committee in order to provide kind of specific experience and expertise from their respective industries. And then there's Oliver also on the call, who has introduced himself, and myself. So at the moment, it's a very small subcommittee, but as we'll come on to later in the presentation, it is about to grow fairly significantly. So what's CTIPs doing? What have we been doing? What are we going to be doing in future? Clearly, if I was to kind of go through the entire thing, it would potentially take a considerable time, more time than we have. So just pulling out a couple of highlights. We have as a committee written one sort of white paper or explainer, what is cyber intelligence and how is it used, which is a really good primer for organizations which are undertaking or considering using threat intelligence to improve their security. As a sort of little aside for the people who are here to find out about the exams, I highly recommend that document as a revision aid. It was written by the same group of people who have written the exams, and it's a fairly succinct sort of synopsis of some of the key themes, many of which are reflected in that exam. And we're building on that sort of successful publication and looking at various other publications in the coming in the coming months. One is focused on routes into CTI, so potential sort of career pathways from various different sort of industry verticals into CTI, and how best individuals can achieve that. And various other papers are also sort of under consideration at various stages at the moment as well. Rob and Oliver, please do jump in if you think that if you've got anything to add, or you think I'm missing anything out, or just being too verbose. But moving on to some of the other things, the CTI maturity assessment tool. This, I believe, in fact, actually, Rob, seeing as this is your baby, could you talk us through, please?
Yeah, Tristan. So first of all, thanks to all of the previous participants in this. So the CTIPs pulled together a CTI maturity assessment tool, because CREST already has a penetration testing and an incident response maturity assessment. So this was actually pulled together not just as a me. I just kind of ran the project. So we had everyone from BAE, Accenture, PwC, Orpheus, Security Alliance, Netitude, all contributing to this project. Currently live is the very detailed version of the maturity assessment. It's in its first version, and we've definitely got some feedback to improve it. It's been used on 2 CBEST engagements as a trial to possibly include in the future for CBEST, although it shouldn't be used for that purposes. So please don't go start doing that. I'll make that very clear. The summary version, which is the super lightweight version for organizations that are just starting to create their own CTI capability and just want to see how they're going on that journey, that has now been completed internally, and hopefully that will be published within the next week, possibly latest 2 weeks. And then the intermediary version should probably follow up by the summer, and it is quite possible, based on the discussions that we're having with different regulators, that we'll be creating, effectively removing the KPI elements of the likes of CBEST or whatnot, that old document that we have, and bringing in a maturity assessment for the CTI capabilities of the clients that we review for regulatory purposes. That's on the CREST website, so please go have a look and provide feedback. And then when we do version 2, I'll be reaching out to everyone again to participate. So please feel free to be part of the working group to do that as well. Tristan.
So I think this is thank you, Rob. I think it's a really good example of what CTIPs can do, the gap that we can fill. So in this case, the regulator identified a requirement. There was no, it needed to be a consensus collegiate-based approach to it. So that it wasn't just one individual's particular flavour of threat intelligence that was represented. So, absolutely ideal task for CTIPs to get involved in, and sure enough, it's a great outcome. So, of course, the exams. So far, we have done a complete rewrite of the CCTIM. So clearly that exam has a sort of a time limit on it. It runs out. The qualification expires after 3 years. So we didn't want the same individuals answering exactly the same questions as they had 3 years ago. So we've rewritten that exam in its entirety and changed the format slightly. And we've also introduced those 2 new exams. If CCTIM is right at the top, then CRTIA is the next one down, and then the entry level exam is CPTIA. And one of the things we discovered in the process of writing or refreshing those exams is it's a painful business. It takes an awful lot of time to create a good exam, and therefore what we're going to do from here on in is not do it every 3 years, but to effectively aim to rewrite approximately a third of each of those exams each year. And then we don't have a big rush at the end, and we can keep those changes going over time, so no 2 people kind of get exactly the same exam. We've also done quite a lot of work on increasing the number of the pool of questions from which the questions are selected, to again make it a more robust exam, so there's less potential for people to kind of pass on questions or whatever. We've had a couple of CTIPs conferences now, both of which were excellent. I personally asked to present at the last one, but wasn't allowed because there were so many brilliant speakers already booked, and you know, absolutely every one of the speakers that I've seen, I think was excellent. And again, this is part of what the organisation is about, part of its core remit, giving individuals an opportunity to learn about CTI, whether that's specific threat actors and their TTPs, or about tools and our own sort of tools and techniques for the intelligence process in the cyber sphere. Really broad spectrum of speakers that we've had, and also of course that opportunity that goes alongside that to kind of have a beer with your or any drink of your choosing with people in the industry and get together and discuss what's going on and form those bridges for future collaborative work and networking. So, all right, that's just a very brief sample of the things that we've been focused on. I must admit, I've been a little bit slack about the way I put those slides together. I picked the things that I could find a kind of a pretty picture to go with. Clearly, there's lots of stuff that the committee is involved in that doesn't come with a pretty picture, so it hasn't got a kind of a slide to go with it. If there's anything that either Rob or Ol would like to pull out as particularly worthy of comment in that respect, please go for it.
Thanks again to those that volunteered and provided presentations as part of the conference. I think it was something that we mentioned at the time, but I think something Tim alluded to just there. Obviously, a lot of kind of the effort and organisation behind the scenes kind of goes into bits that don't, or topics or efforts that aren't necessarily accompanied with pretty pictures. But it's great to be able to be in that position where we can obviously organise those conferences and provide a platform for, I guess, the broader community to get involved and share ideas. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing having more of those opportunities going forward, I think.
Thanks, Ol. From my perspective as well, just some of the other work that we're doing on everyone's behalf is engaging with the regulators as well from a CTI perspective. So quite often that can be quite dominated from a pen testing or IR kind of point of view, and we want to make sure that the CTI community absolutely has a strong voice at the table. So we've been doing that, and also one of the pieces of work that you're going to kind of see land on your desk soon is we're coming out and asking you questions around how some of those regulated frameworks are going, how you're finding them, ideas around kind of how to improve them, especially from CTI perspective, which we can then fill into kind of feedback, into the regulators as well. We've been working on some of the templates and the new frameworks for different regulators as well. And for me, one of the really important things that I think Ol's mostly been leading on this, and that's supporting pathways for people that like working with tech vets, military leavers, to make sure that they understand what's available to them, how we can help, and how we can get them into the industry as well, which is key. There is a whole raft of other things that we're doing. We're all quite busy, and importantly, kind of pushing some of that down onto you as members of CTIPs as well, and making sure that you get involved and participate in those. But yeah, that's all I've got on that. Tim, back over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. So hopefully you can now see a slide on the screen, top tips on taking the exams. I'm not going to give away any massive secrets here. But the good news is I don't think I need to. These exams are so very straightforward. But the key thing, I'm going to kind of jump straight to point 2, use the syllabus to direct your preparation. Each one of these exams, the syllabus, quite a detailed syllabus, is published on the CREST website, and the questions that we have map very clearly across to that syllabus. So there are no trick questions. There's nothing kind of weird and wonderful in there. If you've read the syllabus and you understand the syllabus, you should have no problems at all in taking and passing the exam. Kind of a top tip is, if you read the syllabus, for any element on the syllabus, think, what is the most obvious question that could be asked that would test my knowledge of that, and that is probably the question that you will encounter in the exam. There's been no sort of massive effort to kind of trick people or to force people to sort of think outside the box or whatever. What we're keen to understand is that you have that core knowledge, and we're testing it in the most efficient and effective, straightforward way possible. But I kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit there. First thing, when you're taking the exam, consider which exam you want to take. And this is, in my personal experience, talking to people who haven't been successful on the exam, it's broadly speaking because they've gone too high too quickly, right? So that CTIP exam is written with the expectation that you have had significant experience directing intelligence endeavours in the cyber sphere. The CRTIA, the next one down, there's an expectation there that you are a competent journeyman in terms of being a threat intelligence analyst. It's not for people who have, for example, just completed a cybersecurity degree, or people who have a passing interest or read an interesting book. It's someone we expect the people to be entering that exam to have significant analytical experience within the cyber domain. And then finally, the CPTIA, that is your entry-level qualification and would fit well for someone in one of those situations I just discussed, recent graduate, somebody who's done their own research and reading in and feels ready to kind of start down that pathway. Moving on to point 3, read around the syllabus. I mean, that's a fairly sort of, I would hope everyone would do that anyway. But one question I get a lot is the reading list, which again is on the CREST website. Do I have to read the entire reading list? And it is a long reading list. And some of the books in there, I personally find, or some of the material in there, I find it very hard going. I'm not a natural reader of technical material. No, you don't need to read all of that. You need to look at the syllabus, pick out the bits that you need to work on, and then look through that reading list. But additionally, there are lots and lots of other materials out there that you can use to answer those questions. So don't feel tied to that reading list. Some of the material on there is fascinating, really, really interesting, but there are several books that would take you a long time to read, and you don't have to read all of them. And then finally, in terms of the exam strategy, one thing that catches a lot of people out is the pace of the exam. So the exam is roughly based, all of the exams are roughly based on 1 mark for 1 minute. So your challenge is to get the information down on paper as quickly as you possibly can. So don't write verbose, pretty English. Go for bullet points. Get the facts down as quickly and neatly as you can. There's one exception to this, which is I think one, possibly more questions say, write this as if you were putting in a report to a customer or a client, something along those lines. Clearly, in that case, you have to kind of demonstrate that you would use the correct sort of phraseology and the correct approach in terms of client communications. But generally, use bullet points and succinct answers. This is particularly true for the short form answers on the CTIP exam. We're looking for single words or a small number of words for each answer, because you only have 1 minute to read the question, comprehend the question, and get your answer down. So it is tough in that regard. And again, back to that point, writing a long, beautifully written sentence doesn't get you any more marks than writing the 1 word that we're looking for that demonstrates that you know the answer to the question.
I was going to say, Tim, I was just going to jump in to echo that point. I think one of the challenges as assessors, particularly for the questions in the CTIP, where there's slightly more subjective elements to answers, as a result of that, we've had to develop kind of quite a robust marking scheme that'll cut across multiple answers, just to ensure we're consistent in our marking. And it, from a candidate's perspective, it really does mean, I guess, maintaining that goal in mind of 1 point per mark per minute that if a question asks 2 elements, and as you say, the first half is answered in kind of beautiful flowing prose and with huge amounts of evidence and assessment, and if the second half is neglected, then the candidate's only going to be able to get half the marks for that question. I think that's it's a really important element, and probably something, again, a lot of people are coming to these, particularly the CCTIM exam, obviously having been experienced in the industry for several years, will probably or may have been doing maybe less experience with exam technique. So it's something that's really, really important to bear in mind, I think.
Just from my perspective, yeah, leadership experience is really crucial for the CTIM. The questions are written in such a way that we can kind of see if you really understand how you run an intelligence engagement and how to work with a client, and make sure that you understand kind of legal, ethical, and process and risk, and all these things that you have to remember. The CTIM is there for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is, you know, for CBEST. You can't do a CBEST without a CTIM. And to run a CBEST in a highly regulated environment, you've got to show that you understand risk, legality, how to run a process, how to engage a client properly, how to deliver high quality product. And that's why, you know, it's quite a tough exam, and that's why it's set out the way. But I think the biggest, they've both said it, the absolute biggest clue is if it says kind of, what is this, why is it used, and what is the so what? That's 3 marks. Don't miss one of those. And then remember that if it says 25 or 30 marks for that question, that's potentially 10 different things you need to kind of talk about in 3 different ways, right? So make sure you read the question and understand exactly what it's asking you to say, and you will be absolutely fine. Thanks, Tim.
If I can just jump back in again, I think, Rob, just to echo another point you touched upon there, which is I think really important about, and it's a question we sometimes get asked. Obviously, there are a number of training providers offering courses, particularly for the 2 entry-level exams. I think obviously the focus for the CCTIM exam, the reason why there isn't a kind of dedicated training course available at the moment is that emphasis on experience. And again, I think there's probably more of an emphasis on kind of testing the knowledge and the understanding of candidates who are able to demonstrate that they've been through and understand the kind of nuances of some of those situations on client projects that you mentioned, Rob, as part of that exam, which is obviously a lot more difficult to replicate kind of in isolation as part of any training course.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay, so moving on, change to the committee. I mentioned at the start of this that the committee is going to change sort of shape or size fairly soon, and that process is well underway. We're electing. Have I got that number right, Rob? It is 4 newer members we're electing, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
Cool. So to be elected a member of the committee, it's worth distinguishing here that anyone without any kind of election procedure or anything can be a member of CTIPs. To be elected to the committee, sorry, I misspoke. Anyone who is a member of a CREST member organisation or who has a CREST qualification, a CREST Threat Intelligence qualification, can be a member of CTIPs. To be a member of the committee, you need to be elected, and each CREST company has a vote. To be elected as a member of the committee, you have to be a member of a CREST company and have a CREST CTI qualification. This isn't something that you get paid for, and you know, it's potentially a bit of a rough deal, right? Because we expect quite a lot of you in terms of participation and project work, but there doesn't come with any money. We have a conference call once a fortnight, and then we meet face to face on a quarterly basis. And of course, there are ad hoc sort of calls and meetings on a project by project basis as required. When you get elected, you can your term is 3 years, and then you can get re-elected for another 3 if you so desire. After that, I believe there's a mandatory stand down period before you can sort of come back again. So in terms of CTIPs, why would you want to kind of engage with this and become a committee member? Well, clearly, you know, it is about that professional association. It's helping your industry to become better and being part of that professionalisation of the industry as a whole. You know, flip that on its head. Why would you potentially not want to become involved in this? Well, you know, it does require a significant amount of your time, and whilst it's potentially, you know, not that difficult to get elected, to be successful once you're in post does require you to set aside a reasonable amount of time in any given week in order to make sure that you're making good on your commitments to the committee. It's not a sort of an easy ride, I would suggest. Again, any thoughts from Rob or all very welcome. No. So final slide. How can I get involved? Well, clearly, as we've just discussed, you can stand for election, assuming you are from a CREST member company and you have a threat intelligence, CREST Threat Intelligence qualification. You can join us on the LinkedIn CTIPs Group. This is quite a recent innovation, and I don't think we're yet maximising its utility. I mean, I personally am not, I'm happy to admit to being a bit of a dinosaur and not very at home on social media. I think all of us suffer from the same problem that we see social media as a potential source of intelligence rather than perhaps something to engage and fully share with. So if you are like a social media guru, we need you. Come and help us better at social media. Beyond that, you know, we as a sort of professional body or aspirant professional body, we exist to support you, the industry, whether that's providers of threat intelligence, buyers of threat intelligence, individuals who wish to become more proficient in threat intelligence or move into the industry. Tell us what you want. You know, we have some ideas of what we think is we can be doing, but equally, you know, we may be wide of the mark. So tell us what you want us to do, and we will endeavour within the boundaries of our sort of capability and our resources and our mission statement, which outlines what we're here to do, the quality, capacity, as we discussed before, and communication. Within those boundaries, we will do anything that we can to support the industry, and that, I think, is the last talkie slide. Now it's your turn. Any questions that you have, please feel free to ask away.
That's brilliant. So thank you to all 3 of you for running through that presentation. I think that the attendees have found that very informative, like I have as we've gone through. I was going to launch straight into some questions that have come into us, but I just wanted to say this one to you. One of the attendees has come and said a big thank you to Rob, Tim, Oliver and Ali for running these webinars and giving us a chance to stay up to date with events, and also a big thank you to Ali for very active communication and outreach, keeping us in the picture. So that, I thought that was very nice to come in and thank you to that person. It is much appreciated, and I know everyone's taken their time out today to obviously answer your questions, so thank you.
Actually, on that note, Deb, I just wanted to say to everybody, I know there's been a couple of things in the presentation on the guide and the maturity model and the LinkedIn group. After the webinar, I'll send out an email to everybody who's attended with the links to everything, so you can download them and come to the group, and obviously there'll be a copy of the slides and things like that. So just to let you all know.
Excellent, lovely. Thanks for that, Ali. So yeah, we'll start off with one of the questions. So one of the questions that's come in is, taking inspiration from CompTIA and ISACA, what work has CREST done towards enabling online proctored exams?
I'm going to answer that from a CTI perspective rather than a CREST perspective and a CREST pen testing instant response exam. So I can only answer that from an intelligence perspective. So part of the challenge that we have, obviously, especially with some of the wider CREST elements, is they really are, especially with the SAS, the SAM, and the CTIP exams, kind of really very well, highly regarded exams that also has some regulatory oversight as well, i.e. the regulators need to be happy that our exams are being sat in the right way. So some of those exams cannot be taken with you in your bedroom at home for obvious reasons. They need to be proctored and people need to be in the room. However, that said, we've been talking to Pearson VUE about other options, such as webcam proctored, and also other methods of doing that. I think what we're all battling with at the moment is the potential timelines around what the government wants to actually do in terms of when we'll be relaxing rules, what those social distance rules will be, so therefore how many people we could even fit into an exam centre. Let alone if we're even allowed to do that. So we have options. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, when we know what's going on, we'll be able to update on what those options are going to be, whether or not they can be done at home via webcam remote for some of them, whether or not for others we can do social distancing at either Pearson VUE centres or actually at CREST locations as well, which is something else we're looking to do. Whilst all of that coming together, making sure that we then take that to the likes of the NCSC and the Bank of England to make sure that they're happy, because if they're not happy, then they won't recognise the exams and then it's pointless you having them anyway. So hopefully that answers your question.
Lovely, thanks Rob. And if there is any part or a second part that you want to ask that question, please feel free to type that in the question pane or put up your hand and we can let you ask that question, so no problem at all. So moving on to the next question. This person's keen to hear thoughts on threat intelligence potentially being absorbed into the threat hunting sphere.
I'll say something very quickly and then hand over to you if that's all right, Rob. So yeah, threat hunting has a very close relationship with threat intelligence. However, threat intelligence, there is significant elements of threat intelligence that sit outside of threat hunting. So threat intelligence, based on the intelligence cycle, that whole element of direction, and then, if you were to, in a very crude way, collate hunting with that kind of collection and protect, include a bit of analysis in there. The dissemination bit, they sit outside of that sphere. They are almost their own disciplines in their own right. So no, I don't see threat intelligence being in any way sort of subsumed into threat hunting, but I do see a close and growing nexus. Over to you, Rob.
No, that was perfect. I'm not going to add to that. Let's try and just get through more questions, I think.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So the next question, for the CRTIA exam, do you have to recertify after a while?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
I don't think there is an expiry date off the top of my head, but maybe that's something we can dig into and reach back out to the questioner with the definitive answer on.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. What we'll do is we'll find out the answer and we'll reach out to you and make sure we get back to you with an answer. So no problem at all there. Okay.
Very good question.
Next one. Can you provide some resources to help us better understand the UK 5x5x5 model for information reliability grading?
You might be able to correct me on this. I think the College of Policing resource that's mentioned in the syllabus is the kind of the best explanation with a few examples I've seen on this. But Tim, you may have an idea on a better resource.
No, I think the level of understanding required is not phenomenal, and a simple Google search will, I'm confident, produce sufficient understanding.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that. So this person's saying they wanted to say thank you for everyone for putting on this webinar, and it's great to hear about steps being taken to encourage people into the industry, particularly the ex-military. Are there similar steps for other sectors, such as ex-law enforcement, being taken?
That is a really good question. I think I will double check. One of the organisations we work with is, I think, actually includes ex-police force in there, or ex-forces generally, as include, and that includes all blue light, full stop. But I'll double check. But I'm sure it does. However, if you happen to know of an organisation, an institution, or committee that represents ex blue light that are looking to move into our sector and would like us to work with them, I would love you to send that to us, and we'll set up a meeting straight away.
So it's worth pointing out that clearly we can't set up an organisation specifically to help ex forces personnel or ex-policemen or whoever it may be. What we can do is, where those organisations exist, we can work with them. So please help us build bridges with any and all organisations to help meet that requirement to build capacity within the market.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So moving on to the next question. Are CREST able to provide any form of online training support to candidates who have undertaken CREST training courses? I think this is a bit more of a generalised one, but we can put this into any CREST training courses that they've undergone in threat intelligence, but are unable to take their exam now. Obviously, they're saying that the delay is leading in an erosion to exam standard knowledge.
Okay. I'm going to make the assumption that for that question to exist, you have potentially already completed a training course with a provider. I think there's only two.
I do know who this question's from, and I do know that they have.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
So what I can say is the material in the exams is not going to change between now and when you sit it. So everything that you learnt will still be relevant. Hopefully, in the background, as a very enthusiastic cyber threat intelligence professional, you're kind of using this stuff anyway, and constantly learning and developing yourself, and that actually the training provider is able to provide you with material and support to kind of keep you ready until you can see that exam. I think if this situation turns into a much longer term situation where exam centres aren't going to be open within the next 6 to 8 weeks, then I think there is definitely something that CTIPs can look to try and do. But I don't actually believe that that is going to be the case. I think people will be in a position to sit their exams in the coming weeks. If there's not, then fire that question directly back in, because I think I saw that via email already. And then we'll actually give you a solution.
Lovely, thank you for that. So this is quite a long question, and sort of a few questions within what I'm going to ask you. So please ask me to repeat it again if you don't get this all. So this person's company is actually going through the CREST CTI accreditation process. They've also got other teams that are completing applications for incident response and for SOC within CREST as well. And they've got CREST certification holders within that company as well. One of the prerequisites was to have somebody with a CTIM registered cyber threat intelligence manager in that application. Currently, there is not a single provider globally that runs the CTIM course. Is there scope in the near future to deliver this course, or to have a vendor that does? And should this prerequisite for accreditation not stand within the CREST until CREST can provide such a vendor? Because they're finding that quite difficult with the accreditation process.
Okay. Tim, do you mind if I take this just from a board sort of as well? Cheers, guys. So the long and short of that is, effectively, there has never been a CTIM course, but there has been CTIMs for 4 years. So the only thing that's really getting in your way is either being able to employ a CTIM or have an employee take the actual CTIM exam. Now, the requirement to actually have a CTIM for some of these frameworks isn't actually set by CREST. It's set by the regulators or the owners of those frameworks. It is entirely possible, as you see on the CREST website, it does show companies that have passed the CTI certification as a company, but don't yet have either the individuals or some of their processes signed off. So that has always existed. So you can also be part of that list until, as I said, you've either been fortunate enough to get a CTIM on your books, or have someone pass the exam. But as I said, there isn't actually a training course. There has never been a training course because it is inherently an experience-based exam. So no, I think it unlikely that will be removed from the requirements. So Tim.
One thing that I would add to that is as I understand it, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, to hold the CTIM qualification, it's not just passing the exam. You have to have accumulated 5 years worth of cyber threat intelligence management experience. Now, the exact sort of terms on that are not at the forefront of my mind. However, if you have got that experience, you should be able to take the exam with a very high chance of passing it. So it's a little bit chicken and egg. If you've got the experience, you can take the exam. So I don't think, another thing I'd say is that, and again, it's relevant to the previous question as well, as the CTIPs committee, and particularly as the people who have been involved in writing the exams, we should definitely not be involved in any way in the provision of training, particularly training geared towards those exams, because that'd be like poacher and gamekeeper at the same time, right? That we write the exam and then we write the training material to help you pass the exam. It'd be a joke. So training providers are free and open to create training and to get that accredited if appropriate. It's not something that we as the CTIPs committee should or would want to get involved in. Rob, I think you stuck your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to define what you were saying. And just to quickly mention, I am aware of a training provider that is actually currently writing a course anyway. But obviously, as Tim said, you need the experience. I need to check the numbers, but in order for the regulator to sign you off and the company off to be part of those frameworks, it's either 10,000 or 7,000 hours of demonstratable experience within cyber threat intelligence, as well as the exam. You can still hold the exam, not have those qualifications, and not be part of those frameworks. Having that on your CV, of course, makes you an attractive individual. Hopefully bumps up your salary a little bit, maybe get a little bonus payment for passing the exam as well. But it certainly shows you that you're capable. It just means that those frameworks are what you can't work on without those 7,000 or 10,000 hours of demonstratable CTI experience.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's slightly more complex than I made it out to be.
Brilliant, that's great. We are running over time, but I've got 2 very quick questions to just ask if you're happy to take them.
Yeah.
Okay, this one, Rob, might put you on the spot a little bit. It actually says, Rob, are you considering running a dedicated webinar on your cyber threat intelligence maturity assessment tool?
No, but I'm more than happy to if more than one person turns up. But yeah, of course, yeah, I can do that. Let's get feelers out and see if any more people. If it's only a couple of people, then I can just have direct conference calls with people about it. That's fine.
That's lovely. So we'll look into that, and obviously just keep your eyes peeled, and we'll get something out to you. And the second one is there a way to have a Discord or Slack channel for collaboration in addition to or instead of the LinkedIn group?
Yes, it's being done. So we were hoping to announce that in the next couple of weeks. It's obviously not just as easy as setting up a Slack channel, just because we are part of CREST, and there's security and there's sign off and there's policy documents that we have to, I say we, Ali has drafted, then it's have to be signed off by CREST's CISO, and then the CREST's have to be happy with it. But effectively, the CREST executive have signed off on a group of Slack channels, of which CTIPs will be the first one, because I'm the one setting up the Slack stuff with Ali. So I will make sure that, you know, as ever, CTI is leading the way, and we'll be the first one to get that set up. I very much hope to have that done in the next couple of weeks. I just need to make sure that the CREST CISO can sign off the policy document around the security implementations that we're putting around it. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. We'll be done.
You've got two on your webinar, Rob. There's another person said they want to do your maturity model webinar, so that's 2 people.
Cool. Thanks.
I think that's what Tim put his hand up as well, so I think you've got 3 now.
Okay.
Oh, Oliver's put his hand up. 2 hands. That's fine.
There's another question coming, Deb, if we've got time for it. I think it'd be a shame to go without asking this last question.
Yeah, it probably would. So I will just put this one over to you, and then, yeah, any other questions, then please feel free to get in touch with us afterwards. So have you noticed an increase in the volume of threat intelligence roles within the cybersecurity industry over the past few years? They're wanting to gauge from the professionals whether they are aware of an increase in the amount of roles being created.
We're all nodding.
So yeah, I think.
Go on, Ali.
I think anecdotally, yeah. So I started working in threat intelligence in 2013. I think when we talk about it being a young industry now and us kind of being a young organisation, I think it was really kind of finding its feet back then, and there weren't too many roles available. I don't have any empirical evidence to back that up, but maybe that can be something we factor into the proposed white paper around kind of paths into threat intelligence.
So one thing that is quantifiable that I would point out is there are now an increasing number of specific cyber threat intelligence recruiters. So they clearly think that there is enough of a demand within this specific niche, and that demand is here to stay for the long term. And that's where they're building their infrastructure specifically within this niche. And I mean, some are doing an excellent job. We've got individuals who are actually taking these qualifications as recruiters in order to better understand the industry in which they work, which is really quite phenomenal. I don't think you see that very often. I don't think you see it very often at all, and certainly in other industries it would be somewhat it would be unheard of to hear of somebody taking their accountancy exams or their law exams in order to better understand the industry in which they work. So clearly very commendable.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I probably see a bit more of it from different aspects. One, my salary bill is eye-watering, just because there are a lot of roles and not a lot of people. So it means that the salaries are going up. Great news for you guys. Not so great for the accountant. The other bit is we help build intelligence capabilities within organizations and kind of measure what they're doing, and most of them have got empty seats. And we generally try and persuade people that actually, sorry to go quite military on people, but kind of J2, J3 kind of intelligence and ops should be at the center of everything, driving everything else. So driving security operations, driving kind of architecture, driving even business operations. And businesses are really starting to understand that now, starting to understand that CTI is not IACs, it is not data driven, it is much bigger and has a much bigger role and impact and value than that, which is really great. But the one fundamental thing that I'd kind of point out is the role of the likes of TIBR, for instance. So we've obviously had CBEST, and that did a lot in the UK. A lot of organisations realised off the back of that they needed their own CTI roles within their banks, insurance companies, pensions companies. That created roles. It created roles within vendors. We went from 3 to 16 pretty rapidly. But obviously TIBR is now going live across quite a few countries. It's already live in 5, probably 8 by the end of this year, or should have been 8 by the end of this year. Each one of those countries has their own financial institutions, They will, of course, start developing their own internal CTI teams. There'll be new vendors in continental Europe, or vendors doing in different disciplines, creating a cyber CTI capability as well. So not only has it been going up, it will continue to go up substantially as well.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rob, Tim, and Oliver for answering all your questions today and for that great presentation. I know people have been finding it insightful and informative because we've had the comments through. So thank you to all three of you for answering those questions. And oops, sorry, I thought Tim was saying something then.
Thank you to everyone who's joined the call. I really appreciate your engagement and hopefully carry that forwards into the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And yeah, so thank you to all the attendees, and thank you to Ali Andrews for organising this, and for all of you to come on. If there are any questions after this, please feel free to send them through, and we can obviously get in touch with the guys and get back to you with any answers. So once again, thank you. Have a good rest of the day, and take care, everybody out there.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
to you, Debbie, for doing the questions. Thank you.